Hello and welcome to Biology lessons. So, let's talk about biochemistry. Today we'll start talking about biomolecules, also known as biomoles. Here you have 5 pictures of biomolecules. Some of them you may know, some of them you might not know. So we are going to be seeing these guys in the next classes. So, today we are going to be talking about biomolecules. So let's take a look on the atoms that make those biomolecules. The star of the show is carbon. Carbon is the center of biological molecules. Every organic molecule contains carbon and hydrogen, but the carbon is the center, is the main piece. So carbon is the atom that makes life possible on this planet. So on our planet, life is based on carbon. We don't know if in other planets, other systems, other universe, life will be based on something else, like silicon, for example. But in our planet, if it's alive, it contains carbon. And if you remember the previous classes, carbon formed 4 covalent bonds, so it can share 4 electrons, making bonds with 4 sides. And it allows many stable compounds. It allows diamond, graphite, but also many organic stable compounds. And the representation for carbon is going to be a dark gray or black sphere in the chemistry modules. So if you see a dark gray or black ball making 4 covalent bonds, okay, that's a carbon. Okay, so here we have, for example, a molecule, and it's pointing there dark gray. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 carbons represented in this weird molecule. Okay, so there it is. All biochemical molecules, all biochemical compounds are going to be having carbon. Then I'm going to be talking about nitrogen. You saw it before. Nitrogen makes 3 covalent bonds, and nitrogen is going to be represented by a blue ball. Oxygen makes 2 covalent bonds, is going to be represented by a red ball. And hydrogen makes 1 covalent bond, is going to be represented by 1 light gray or white ball. Okay, so you have that same compound, and you have nitrogen in there, oxygen in there, and hydrogen in there. So those are the 4 main elements in life. Actually, carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen is going to be present in all biochemical molecules that I'm going to be showing you in the near future, and nitrogen is going to be present in many of them, but not all of them. Okay, so let's start talking about carbohydrates. Carbohydrate is one group of macromolecules, molecules that are present in disproportionate amounts in living organisms. It's known as carbohydrate because it sounds like carbon and water, carbohydrated. And it's kind of carbohydrated because we are going to have there 6 carbons. I'm going to represent it here with 6 open carbons like that. Each carbon is capable of making 4 covalent bonds, so I'm making there 4 covalent bonds. In each of those carbons, I'm going to be make 1 oxygen, so there 1 oxygen for each. And then I'm going to be completing everything with hydrogen, so complete with hydrogen around. What we have here, kind of a carbohydrate, we have 6 carbons, 6 oxygens, and hydrogens. And if you take a look there, we have carbon and oxygen, 2 hydrogens, carbon and water, carbon and kind of water. They are not, it's not water because they are not glued together, but it's like if you got carbons and you put the pieces of water in there. That's why it's called a carbohydrate. Okay, it's not carbon with water, but it's pretty close to that. Okay. Carbs actually are not usually shown open like this. They are shown closed. So I'm going to show you how we close this to make the typical carbohydrates that are going to be playing in biology from now on. So, closing it up, you see, we are getting close here, and we are closing up with 1 oxygen closing the ring over there. So we have there 6 carbons, each carbon with its own oxygen. you can see that this oxygen here belongs to this carbon over there, so each carbon contains one oxygen. Then we put one hydrogen for every oxygen that's not already doing two bonds, so you see that this one here that's making two bonds already is not going to have a hydrogen, and then we complete the hydrogens with everything else. So now everybody's happy. You see all the hydrogens there have made one covalent bond. All the oxygens have made two covalent bonds, and all the carbons have made three covalent bonds. Everybody's happy, and this is a carbohydrate. It is closed. Okay, this is glucose, the most common carbohydrate in life, and you're going to be using it a lot. You really need to know glucose. It contains 6 carbons. It forms an hexagon with the oxygen, and it has one side carbon. This here is a side carbon that stays over there. Okay, and the molecular formula is C6H12O6. And here is another representation of glucose, and if I show it with letters, it will look something like that. Now, a ring making a hexagon over here with one side carbon over there. So this here is a glucose. Let me complete with OHs. Let me complete with hydrogen all over the place. This here what looks like a glucose. A lazy representation of glucose is something like that. A hexagon with the oxygen there in the corner and one side branch. This here is representing carbon here, carbon, 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 carbon. So this here makes a hexagon with one side carbon. This here is the representation. Okay, it may also be represented like that, or may be even represented without the carbons in the ring like this. This here is the typical representation of glucose. And the glucose is the most important monosaccharide, one of the most important carbohydrates that are going to be using in biology. But let's take a look at another one. So 6 carbons again. Okay, 6 carbons again. So this could be a glucose, right? It's closing, but it didn't close making a hexagon. It closed making a pentagon. Let's complete with oxygens again. No, each carbon contains one oxygen. Let's complete with the hydrogens, and there it is. Which molecule is this? You know already it's not glucose. But what's that? This is fructose. Fructose contains 6 carbons, just like glucose, but it makes a pentagon with the oxygen. So it's different to glucose. It has 2 side carbons. Have here carbon and carbon, 2 side carbons over there, one here, one here. So it's not like glucose. But the molecular formula is C6H12O6, just like glucose. So be careful. If you read C6H12O6, it might be talking about fructose, might be talking about glucose. It depends on how these carbons close on each other. If it forms a pentagon with 6 carbons, that's a fructose. It forms a hexagon with 6 carbons, it's probably to be a glucose. Okay, so there it is, seen in the molecular structure on the right. If we see with the letters, it will look like this, complete with the OHs, complete with the hydrogens, and this here is a fructose. If you want to check it out, every hydrogen contains 1 covalent bond, every oxygen is making 2 covalent bonds, and all the carbons are making 3 covalent bonds. So you check it out to see if everything is right. Okay. Another way of representing is like this. Now it looks like a guy saying, hey, hands up. It's a pentagon, 2 side carbons, or we can see here a pentagon with 2 side carbons, one here, another one there. They might not necessarily be up, because you see this here is 3-dimensional, it's not bidimensional. But okay, hands up usually is a good representation of a fructose. Pentagon, 6 carbons, 2 side carbons. Oh, another one. This has 5 carbons, so it's not glucose, it's not fructose. It closes a pentagon, just like fructose, but it only has 1 side carbon. Now completing with the OHs, complete with the hydrogen. So what you have there? A ribose. 5 carbons forming a pentagon, 1 side carbon. So in this case here, this is a C5H10O5. and it's another kind of sugar called ribose. Okay, this is the molecular structure of it, and if we draw it to look like this, it's like a pentagon guy with one hand up saying, hey, hi, how are you? And here, other vision of it. Pentagon with one side carbon. Ribose can be seen as ribose or as deoxyribose. Deoxyribose, in this carbon here, known as carbon number 2, we have one oxygen less. Ribose is going to be used in many molecules like RNA, for example, and deoxyribose is going to be used in DNA. So this is how it goes. And if you want to start paying attention to this, we're going to be seeing this in the near future. This is the carbon 1, carbon 2, carbon 3, carbon 4, and carbon 5. The carbon number starts in the opposite side of the side branch carbon. Okay, carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The difference between deoxyribose and ribose is the lack of oxygen in deoxyribose in the carbon 2. All those that I showed you, they are called monosaccharides. Mono means one. They are one monomer or one ring. Carbohydrates are made by one ring or more. And when you have more, you have repeating rings, then we call that a monomer. And if you have one of them is a monomer, and if they are repeating, it ends up making a polymer. So many of these rings together, making a very long carbohydrate, you make a polymer, like cellulose is a polymer. Okay, a few of them for you. Glucose, you saw it before. It looks like a guy with one hand up but looking to the side. Very important molecule for many biological molecules. And its main use is for energy, but it's the main monomer in other molecules as well. Okay, fructose, both hands up. It's very important for energy, especially in plants. Ribose, one hand up, saying, hey, hi, how are you? This here is structural. It's used in RNA, DNA, and so on. And finally, we have there galactose. No structure required, because actually if you look to a galactose molecular drawing, you will guess a glucose, because structurally it's very, very similar to a glucose. The difference is the position of stuff. So there's no necessity for you to learn the structure of galactose because to look like a glucose, but galactose, it's used for energy because it's the milk monosaccharides that makes lactose, the sugar in milk. Okay, so those 4 monosaccharides, they are important for you to know what they do, where you find them, and those 3 on the left are important for you to know the structure. You should be able to identify them or to draw them. I hope you had fun. There's a quiz here now for you, and I'll see you in the next class. Bye-bye.